To the editor of the Knickerbocker magazine.
Sir, I observed in your last month's periodical a communication from a Mr. Vanderdonk giving some information concerning Communipaw. I herewith send you, Mr. Editor, a legend connected with that place, and am much surprised it should have escaped the researches of your very authentic correspondent, as it relates to an edifice scarcely less faded than the House of the Four Chimneys. I give you the legend in its crude and simple state, as I heard it related. It is capable, however, of being dilated, inflated, and dressed up into very imposing shape and dimensions. Should any of your ingenious contributors in this line feel it inclined to take it in hand, they will find ample materials, collateral and illustrated, among the papers of the late Rainier Scatz, many years since crier of the court and the keeper of the city hall in the city of Manhattos, or in the library of that important and utterly renowned functionary, Mr. Jacob Hayes, long-time high constable who, in the course of his extensive researches, has amassed an amount of valuable facts to be rivaled only by that great historical collection, the Newgate Calendar. Your humble servant, Barent von Schaik.
Guests from Gibbet Island, a legend of Communipaw.
Visited the ancient and renowned village of Communipaw may have noticed an old stone building of most ruinous and sinister appearance. The doors and window shutters are ready to drop from their hinges. Old clothes are stuffed with broken panes of glass, while legions of half-starved dogs prowl about the premises and rush out and bark at every passerby. For your beggarly house in a village is most apt to swarm with profligate and ill-conditioned dogs. What adds to the sinister appearance of this mansion is a tall frame in front, not a little resembling a gallows, and which looks as if waiting to accommodate some of the inhabitants with a well-merited airing. It is not a gallows, however, but an ancient signpost.
was one of the most orderly and peaceful of village taverns, in which all the public affairs of Communipaw were talked and smoked over. In fact, it was in this very building that Olaf, the dreamer, and his companions concerted that great voyage of discovery, in which they explored Buttermilk Channel, were nearly shipwrecked the Straits of Hellgate, and finally landed on the island of Manhattan, and founded the great city of New Amsterdam.
Even after the province was cruelly arrested from the sway of their high mightinesses by the combined force of the British and Yankee, this tavern continued its ancient loyalty.
It is true, the head of the Prince of Orange disappeared from the sign, a strange bird being painted over it with the explanatory legend of the Wildgans, or the wild goose.
But this, all the world knew to be a sly riddle of the landlord, the worthy Teunis van Giesen, a knowing man in a small bay who laid his finger beside his nose and winked whenever anyone studied the signification of his sign and observed that his goose was hatching and would join the rest of the flock whenever they flew over the water, an enigma which was the perpetual recreation and delight of the loyal but fat-headed burghers of Communipaw.
Under the sway of this patriotic, though discreet and quiet publican, the tavern continued to flourish in primeval tranquility, and was the resort of all true-hearted Netherlanders from all parts of Pavonia, who met here, secretly and quietly, to smoke and drink the downfall of Britain and Yankee and success to Admiral Van Tromp.
The only drawback on the comfort of the establishment
Was a nephew of mine host, a sister's son, Jan Joost van der Scamp by name, and a real scamp by nature.
This unlucky Vipster showed an early propensity to mischief, which he gratified in a small way by playing tricks upon the frequenters of the Wild Goose.
Putting gunpowder in their pipes, squips in their pockets, and astonishing them with an explosion as they sat nodding around the fireplace in the bar room.
And if perchance a worthy burgher from some distant part of Pavonia had lingered until dark over his potation, it was odds but that young Vanderscamp would slip a briar under his horse's tail as he mounted, and send him clattering along the road in neck-or-nothing style, to his infinite astonishment and discomfiture.
It may be wondered at why mine host of the Wild Goose did not turn such a graceless varlet out of doors.
But Teunis van Giesen was an easy-tempered man, and having no child of his own, looked upon his nephew with almost parental indulgence. His patience and good nature were doomed to be tried by another inmate of his mansion.
This was a cross-grained curmudgeon of a Negro named Pluto, who was a kind of enigma in Communipaw. Nobody knew where he came from.
He was found one morning after a storm, cast like a sea monster on the strand in front of the Wild Goose, and lay there more dead than alive. The neighbors gathered round and speculated on this production of the deep, whether it were fish or flesh, or a compound of both, commonly called a merman. The kind-hearted Teunis van Giesen, seeing that he wore the human form, took him into his house and warmed him into life.
By degrees, he showed signs of intelligence and uttered sounds very much like language, but which no one in Communipaw could understand. Some thought him a Negro who had either fallen overboard or escaped from a slave ship. Nothing, however, could ever draw from him the account of his origin.
When questioned on the subject, he merely pointed to Gibbet Island, a small rocky island which lies in the open bay just north of Communipaw, as though that were his native place, although everyone knows it was uninhabited.
In the process of time, he acquired something of the Dutch language. That is to say, he learned all its vocabulary of oaths and maledictions with just words sufficient to string them together.
Thunder and Blitzen! Thunder and lightning were the gentlest of his ejaculations.
For years, he kept about the wild goose, more like one of those familiar spirits or household goblins that we read of than like a human being. He acknowledged allegiance to no one, but performed various domestic offices when it suited his humor. Waiting occasionally on the guests, grooming the horses, cutting wood, drawing water, and all this without being ordered. Lay any command on him, and the stubborn sea urchin was sure to rebel.
He was never quite so much at home, however, as when on the water, flying about his skiff or canoe, entirely alone, fishing, crabbing, or grabbing for oysters.